Welcome back to MythVision Podcast. I have Dr. Mott and Dr. Kill. I guess, is this what we're going to have our names? I didn't bring the names up, but let's see.
Oh.
No, Dr. Mott is sometimes he's got split personality disorder, and it's totally understandable. And
he's a binity.
Absolutely. I'm excited about today's discussion. Really, we're giving you the platform, putting you on the pedestal today, Dr. Kill. But I do want to give a little background, just letting people know, like, Dr. Kipp has dug deep on the Dead Sea Scrolls. He is big on Old Testament. Obviously, Department of Religion is, where he comes out of. And so he's aware of the Dead Sea Scrolls. He's aware of the Old Testament. We have a course coming up. Actually, we're going to be doing What is the topic specifically again?
It's Israelite religion.
Got it.
So it's basically what's by looking through the texts and the material culture, investigating the religions on the ground and as they were translated into the literature in the Iron Age of Palestine.
And you know a thing or two about that. Be on the lookout. We will be having a college level, very high quality course put together for people who may never going to university, going to a college or whatever. You can do it from your own home. And I think that's the direction everything is starting to head in anyway. So be on the lookout.
With the humanities, yeah. I think it's kind of looking like that. So I'll just say one more thing about it. It's actually, so a number of the lectures for this course that I'm doing are they've been on my YouTube channel for pretty much since I started it. And I've made the decision to take them down in large part because most of them have copyright issues that get dig. Some of them, there's a whole rack of them that nobody's ever seen just because they're completely restricted. You can't show them anywhere.
Wow.
And that's because I like to I like movies and I like music and I like silly cartoons and things. So I try to throw a lot of that stuff into my content. And of course, it gets dinged. So I'm very excited about this because it'll be the first time that I'll be able to get this content out into a venue that everyone can see it.
Absolutely. I can't wait. And Dr. Mott or Dr. Matthew Munger, can you tell us a little bit about what your background is?
Yeah, so I like Dr. Kill, have a PhD in basically in Dead Sea Scrolls and kind of religious studies, but have did my dissertation on Dead Sea Scrolls, and I spent a lot of time working with just ancient Jewish literature, working with the kind of reception and the ways that early Jewish literature has been transmitted and spread throughout all kinds of different other texts and contexts. So the use and reuse of Jewish literature is kind of my speciality, as we say in the South.
Well, thank you for joining us today. This was a last minute getting together, and really what we want to telling you up front and remind people when they enter into the sacred territory that we're in right now, that they're on holy ground. They need to take their shoes off, number one. Number two, they're going to be entering into the Holy of Holies when this is done in about 55 minutes, which is Kipp Davis's YouTube channel. So for those of you who are wondering, okay, what are they doing today? We're going to talk about that. But he also has a premiere. And we're going to be going at the end of this. Don't leave. You're not going to want to miss this premiere on the Dead Sea Scrolls unapologetically. So, Kipp, take us off. I mean, obviously, I'm just going to show that you got the Patreon. People can go join and support you there. You're doing content again, or you're starting to do content on Patreon again?
Yes. In fact, the first video, the first patrons only video is that I've done in almost a year is being launched today, because the live premiere for this first installment of it's going to be a long series about the Dead Sea Scrolls. The first installment is airing live at 10 o'clock Pacific, right after we're finished here. And then as soon as that's over at about 10:30, all my patrons are going to be able to watch part 2 right away. So
Look at that thumbnail. Whoo. Huh?
If you can't wait, then go join my Patreon, and you'll get to see the second part.
Yeah, so you're gonna already have. You're gonna be ahead of the game if you're
Ahead of the game.
That's what we need. We need people to be ahead of the game. So go check out Dr. Kipp's YouTube and his Patreon. We also have one here at MythVision. And of course, I tatted up Dr. Kipp, and he actually felt, after seeing this picture, that he needed to actually tattoo his arm with his name. It was that cool.
Yeah. Matt and I talked about it. I won't tell you what he decided he should have for a tattoo on his forearm. But I'm still very seriously considering going with the big nameplate there.
Yeah, like tell me you're a narcissist without telling me you're a narcissist.
Thank you.
If I was a Christian apologist, that would probably have been my first step.
Well, you'd probably get a cross. You'd probably put a cross somewhere, because that way everybody would be sure to know that you're marked.
That's true. That's true.
I want to hit this with a bang, guys. Having both heavy hitter Dead Sea Scroll scholars, Dr. Mott, of course, has dove into Jubilees like a champ on MythVision. I mean, you really blew our mind. A rewrite of Genesis, like showing a fixed canon is not the case. And this is just how they were. And this is something Dr. Kill was talking about as well. I'm going to keep referring to you guys by your death names because it's only respectful. But what are you bringing for us here in the next 50 minutes that we're going to cover, Dr. Kipp?
Is this for me?
Yep.
Oh, so one of the primary reasons for doing this series on the Dead Sea Scrolls, I mean, people are interested in it. It was one of the first requests that I got after I started making content on YouTube, was for me to do like a whole like a video, at least, or a set of videos all about the Dead Sea Scrolls. So it took me a long time to kind of sort through how I wanted to do this. And one of the approaches that I felt very strongly about taking, certainly over the last year or so, is one, to counter a lot of the apologetic claims that get made with regularity about the Dead Sea Scrolls. I'm fairly sure people have an idea what I'm talking about, but if you peruse content just a little bit on this platform, if you've ever been in a church and seen a talk featuring the Dead Sea Scrolls, you're going to hear many of the same talking points. There are oldest witnesses to the Hebrew Bible, to the Old Testament scriptures. They contain almost the entire Old Testament, and the text that we have is virtually identical to what was there in Qumran. So the narrative tends to be propagated that the Dead Sea Scrolls basically vouchsafe and guarantee the reliability and the historicity of the Hebrew Bible. And it's a very how do I put this? It's not intellectually honest. It's not an intellectually honest approach to the material to take that tack. I will work through and explain why and how apologists tend to make these claims, but one of the big features within the video series is better ways, or I guess more comprehensive ways of examining the scrolls, and in so doing, challenging assumptions about what's there, not just from apologists, but also from scholars too. This is something that that Matt and I have talked about for pretty much, I think, since we've known each other. There is a model by which scholarship investigates and talks about and publishes the content from the Dead Sea Scrolls, and it's grounded in ways in which, I guess, for a long time, scholars have categorized the material. And these categories are modern inventions. They're anachronistic in many respects. And, not speaking for Matt, but this is something in conversations we've had. We've felt strongly about how differently we can tell these stories about the literature and what that might look like.
Do you guys both find, how do I put this? I went to Boston recently, interviewed Paula Fredrickson, and I asked her, I said, hey, where do you see scholarship going? We had a really fun time. I mean, multiple interviews. I still have, 8 or 9 of them on my Patreon, slowly leaking them. You got to help keep the community growing. So I try to keep people having something that are Patreon members. Well, she says, I don't know. And she almost didn't seem optimistic. And I said, well, why is that? She goes, well, some people are saying that they're doing historical work and they're doing historical research, but they're really under the guise of an apologist. They're actually just doing this to try and propagate or push their positions or somehow sell it to their audience rather than actual historical work. And she said, and there's like different kinds of groups in scholarship that do this. And it sounded almost like you were going there, Kipp, where you were like, it's like, hey, how does the Dead Sea Scroll material sell? How do I get more people to be active in this thing? How do we make Dead Sea Scrolls a more popular idea? Oh, churches. Oh, let's give them what they want. And that's tell them what the Dead Sea Scrolls have in common with the rest of their corpus that they think is God-breathed, holy, inerrant, infallible. Do you find that same problem too, Matthew? Like, what's going on in the Dead Sea Scroll scholarship?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think definitely the splintering thing is correct, that we see, like to be fair, we do see more and more scholars that are free from as a dogmatic chains or whatever we want to call it, that aren't out there just trying to use it for their own gains. So I think we have to be fair that there are a good number of scholars that are trying to do things fairly from a historical perspective. So we're not trying to make ourselves the great heroes and that everyone else in the field are the enemies or anything. But I think what we see is a splintering where there is a greater awareness by scholars that are using historical methods, that there is a difference between what we're doing and what scholars who are trying to use the scrolls as a weapon or as a way to legitimize their beliefs, what they're doing. And you can see it in people like that are, I think there's a bigger difference between like the experts in the Dead Sea Scrolls and those that are just outside.
Right.
So like the people that are working with the scrolls, that do the material work, that are actually dealing with the texts and the scrolls, the fragments, the material stuff, are I mean, there's a few people in there that are doing stuff that are trying to prove Christianity or something, but for the most part, people are pretty aware of what's going on. But you take a step just kind of outside this group, and you've got people that are, that will be whatever theologians or be into early Christian studies or whatever, that are using the scrolls as a reference, and they're trying to use what they understand the scrolls to be, to back up their claims of the development of Christianity in relation to where Judaism was. And that's where you see this very polemic use, where they're kind of grabbing onto the ideas that they can find that support their positions, and they frame the literature of the Dead Sea Scrolls into something that that just goes off in this apologetic thing. I mean, it's like I'm doing a commercial for Kipp right now, actually, it sounds like, but I'm not. I don't mean to, but we just agree so much on this stuff that
there's a
like,
video Kipp sent me, actually. When you're ready, I'll play that. I like that one where he's like what he would prefer, Moses' signature on a 1400-year-old.
I know.
I think this will be important. So, but let Dr. Mott finish. Sorry.
Yeah, no, but I mean, but that's kind of the point, is that what everybody says is they take this narrative where like, so I mean, for myself, I would tell the narrative that we've got, so 75, 76, 77 years ago, we had manuscripts that were 1,000 years old, and people said, this is amazing. We have 1,000-year-old manuscript. So we have this Codex Leningradensis, and we're super happy that we know what the medieval text of the Hebrew Bible looked like. And then they discover the Dead Sea Scrolls, and like everybody pushes it back 1,000 years and said, this is amazing. Now we know what the text looked like. But they literally haven't changed what they think about the text of the Hebrew Bible. They just changed the propaganda about it. Yeah. And so like they say, oh, well, instead of it being, it survived for 1,000 years, it's survived for 2,000 years. But that doesn't get us any closer to questions of historicity. It doesn't get us any questions of composition or historical importance or canonization. So nothing has really changed in their narratives compared to the information that we actually have. And so that's one of those things that, like, no matter what we find, people are always going to find a way to say, yep, see, that proves me right. And that's where the older and the more mystical these things are for the public, the easier it is for people to use that as their kind of their weapon in the apologetics game.
Well put. Dr. Kill, I'm going to go ahead and play this thing, and you just tell me, pause, make a comment every so often.
Too, Matt.
Should I play this at 1.5 speed just to save us?
Yeah, maybe. It's pretty short, but play at 1.25.
1.25.
I hate listening to stuff super fast.
Chipmunky. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and play this at 11 seconds starting. Just stop me when you want to make a comment. And of course, the more you stop me, the safer I feel, because I don't need to get dinged by YouTube. Here we go.
So, if you, what do you wish could be found, right, to confirm the Bible? What, if you could just go pick anything that you'd want, what do you wish could be found? Then usually I answer, well, the Book of Deuteronomy, signed by Moses, dated about 1400 BC. Be awesome. Okay.
So let's stop it right there, eh? So we just stop it right there. First of all, I want to point out, and then Matt, you talk. I want to point out the question. The question is, what are we looking for that confirms the Bible? Mm-hmm. This is the starting point, right? And by the way, this is a guy who I didn't recognize. When I saw, I was just digging around this morning, seeing what I could see on YouTube for apologetics on the Dead Sea Scrolls. Here's a guy I've never seen before. He's not even a biblical scholar. He's a physicist giving a talk about the Bible and about the Dead Sea Scrolls. But the starting point is always a problem when it comes to the apologetics as they're involved with these texts. They are looking for they've drawn a conclusion, and now they're looking for the evidence to support that conclusion.
With you. All right, continuing. Stop me if you
want. Let me throw in something there.
Okay.
Because there's also, there's another massive problem there. There's a lot of problems. I agree totally. The question is silly, and it's also silly because I think both Kipp and I are honest about the fact that we have literally no ambitions of disproving the Bible. Like there is no problem to corroborate. That's a word I always mess up. Sorry, corroborate some of the general things we find in the Hebrew Bible. Like we're not against Hezekiah having been king, or the existence of Jerusalem as a city, or things like, so it's not, we're not going out wholesale saying throw out everything in the Bible. So confirming the Bible, like I don't even know what that means when they say it. But the other thing is like I don't think even evangelical scholars will assume that Moses wrote Deuteronomy. Like I think pretty much everybody understands Deuteronomy as a rewriting of the Pentateuch, or in some form it's another version of the story that you find in the rest of the from Exodus to Numbers. And I think most evangelical scholars would then frame it like, oh, we would want the version of Deuteronomy that was found in the temple and it was signed by Josiah or something, because they think that that's where Deuteronomy shows up on the scene. And so there's like some kind of weird, like, yeah. So I mean, this is using a very bad reference that kind of ruins the trustworthiness of the argument from the get-go.
So just to give people a recap that are just now tuning in, we've been playing this by a physicist who you could tell is probably in front of a church, and they are saying, well, what would we want to find to affirm and kind of prove the Bible? And he's like, well, I'd love to get a signature of Moses on a 1,400-year-old document. That would be enough. But then he goes further, and here's what he has to say.
I'm an Old Testament person, so that would be my leaning. But I think we've actually been given something better than that in the Dead Sea Scrolls.
So he is saying we got something better than Moses signing a document 1,400 years old. It's in the Dead Sea Scrolls.
I mean, it's hard to imagine that anyone could as incredible a discovery as the Dead Sea Scrolls are. And I think maybe in my mind, maybe it is a better discovery, but I expect for very different reasons than this gentleman is suggesting, just by the volume of material and how much insight it provides to us into the period of time, the snapshot in history in early Judaism, which in many respects is probably a more interesting question insofar as our religious conversations go today. But it would be astonishing to me that he actually thinks this, that he actually thinks the Dead Sea Scrolls are a better find than a signed copy of Deuteronomy by
I'm telling you
Moses.
right now, personally, I'd take the signed copy like evidence that Moses wrote. So that would blow my mind to me compared to Dead Sea Scrolls. It doesn't prove what was written or what not happened. It would just be like, whoa, this guy existed. Like we could like nail him down now.
But what would what would that even look like? I mean, so there's just so much weird stuff there. But is his point that this is the Bible from the time of Jesus? Is that his point? Like that's why it's a bigger deal? Like he'd rather have the things that were in circulation while Jesus was alive than the Moses copy. I don't get the.
Should I continue playing?
Yeah,
he might
maybe he'll clarify for us.
Okay, let's see.
Again, you're probably familiar with the history for this. The first scrolls were found by some Bedouin shepherd boys trying to find a lost goat. So they're throwing rocks into the caves in the wadi, and heard a pot crack when they threw into one of the caves.
Fast forward a little here.
And one of the scrolls was in incredible shape. It was actually wrapped in tar to preserve it from moisture even. But they took these 7 scrolls back, and just a fun story. The quality of them was so good that they toyed with making them into shoes. It's one of the stories that's told about them anyhow. But the best scroll. Can we
pause it there for a second?
Yeah.
So one of the things that happens, one of the things that has happened over the course of almost 80 years now, of retelling this story, even just of the discovery, is the way in which the Dead Sea Scrolls discovery story has become what I have seen some scholars designate like a classic discovery narrative. You know, you've got the dumb Arabs, you know, out in the desert just throwing rocks around and accidentally find this jar with these satchels of high quality leather. And the only thing they can think of to do with them is to make shoes out of them, right? Thank God for the virtuous Western scholars who saved the Dead Sea Scrolls from being turned into
Shoes.
a Bedouin's shoes. And we have, and I want to point out, we have very good reasons to doubt many aspects of this story as it continues to get told. And there are good, really good scholars who are working on sorting out the fact from the myth that's developed around these things. Matt, did you have something to say about that?
No, it's just I like the way they kind of conflate ideas about the materiality into each other and then incorporate into this origin story. Like they were in such good shape that you could have made shoes. Like anybody who has seen true a parchment, like well made writing material, knows that that's not shoe leather. And so this is a completely different part of the story where some of the scrolls, some of the fragments that we have are just really coarse, poor material that is in very bad shape. And it was compared with shoe leather. And so you have like this kind of this detail that, yeah, some of them are not wonderfully, amazingly well prepared things that have been meticulously kept and wrapped in tar. What does that mean? Wrapped in tar?
That's a new one for me too.
I think it means I think he's again conflating the jars being sealed with tar, the clay jars being tarred so that they wouldn't leak.
I mean, how would that have even worked?
No, you don't. It's just but it's just grabbing details of stuff that he's seen someplace, and funnily enough, doesn't understand the physics of what he's saying.
Poor physicist. I'm just kidding.
This is from the physicist.
Let's wrap our scrolls in tar.
Is considered the greatest discovery in archaeology in the 20th century, at least. And this is the Great Scroll of Isaiah. It's the whole scroll. Okay, it's the only Dead Sea Scroll that's got a complete Bible text in it. In fact, they thought it was, when it was first discovered, they thought it was a forgery or taken from some old synagogue. Okay, because it's so good in terms of its preservation. Again,
I could see Kipp's.
So, I mean, a couple things there. I mean, I have heard others say that it's the only completely intact scroll that was found in the collection, which is not accurate. We have other ones, such as the All Souls Deuteronomy scroll, which is a completely intact manuscript, but it's quite small. And it's, you know, it's probably not as interesting to apologists because it's you know, a much smaller completely intact manuscript, and it only contains a portion of the book of Deuteronomy. One of the really interesting things that we see in the Dead Sea Scrolls is different types of literature using the same text in different ways. So and what was the other thing he said there that drew my attention? He talked about it being complete. I was going to say something else, and now my mind
going.
just drew a blank.
I'm sure he'll refresh you.
Probably. Oh,
so complete.
One more thing I wanted to mention. And this will come up, especially in my second video. If you're interested in the Great Isaiah Scroll, so-called, then, you know, the second video is the one for you. But there were actually 2 copies of Isaiah found in Qumran Cave 1 in those first discoveries. And the really interesting thing, I think, about the discovery of these 2 manuscripts is in the ways in which they're fairly different from one another. But again, that's one of those things that people often don't hear a lot about.
Thank you. And I'll get to your super chats here towards the end before we catapult into the next dimension, which means we go to Dr. Kipp Davis's YouTube channel. I'm going to continue, and let me know if there's anything else you hear, and we can always go over to the next video too when you want.
And just to focus on one passage here, the power of the Dead Sea Scrolls is that it shows the highly accurate copying that the Hebrew scribes did for about 1,000 years. Okay, because prior to discovering, say, the Isaiah scroll, the next earliest Old Testament Hebrew texts that we had were Codex and the Aleppo Codex, date to about 900 to 1000 AD. So we've got the Isaiah scroll that's 1,000 years earlier than anything we had before. And what does it show? It shows that all the stories that the Masoretes told about how accurately and painstakingly they worked to copy these texts by hand was paying off, because just in chapter 3,
Fact or not fact?
You go, Matt.
I mean, so again, like nobody's contesting that the Masoretes copy the text effectively. So the Masoretic text isn't what's in the Great Isaiah Scroll. So it's just, I mean, there's no one who makes that claim. If the Masoretes if this had been a Masoretic text and we were comparing it as a Masoretic text, so sure, he's got 17 letters in 166 words or whatever he says it is, but like there are literally thousands of differences between the Masoretic text and the Great Isaiah Scroll. And so
the actual count, according to the editors of the Great Isaiah Scroll, is over 2,600 textual variants just in the Great Isaiah Scroll.
And you're not even trying to say, oh, it's a complete different narrative. Like, it's almost like when Bart Ehrman points out there's hundreds of thousands of variants. Most of them are insignificant. But if they're so meticulous, it's
right,
almost like the
and
Quran.
that's the thing is, so what, like, and we have to pick our arguments carefully here. Like, so we're not trying to say something we're not, but like he's making the statement that the Masoretes prove that the transmission of the text is so meticulously done that there are just so few things that could be different. Mm-hmm. But what the Great Isaiah Scroll says, one, is that it wasn't the Masoretic text. So it wasn't, I mean, it wasn't a Masoretic text at that point. That doesn't come for another few hundred years. Okay, so the Masoretes are later. And so it can't be the same thing. But even if we call it a pre or a proto-Masoretic text or whatever you want to find, like there's still large amounts of differences at both at the micro and the macro level in these things. And like one of the things that our good friend Drew Longacre has shown us, and I'm sure you'll talk about this in some of your videos, Kipp, is that like the part of the Great Isaiah Scroll, so it's copied from two different manuscripts, so it's been copied by two scribes from two different original manuscripts, and the division is at chapter 33 or after 33, and so the second half of the manuscript is copied from a damaged exemplar. So a damaged copy. And so you can literally see where the scribe had to make stuff up, like didn't know what was there because the damaged scroll didn't give him a text. And so the scribe literally just filled in the blanks as best as possible.
It's pretty remarkable because there are several places throughout that second half where the scribe has left like sizable blank space. And then another scribe has come in. I think it's a third hand, isn't it?
Yeah, I think
that's come in and filled in the chunk of text that was missing. But one of the things that Drew's article showed was that this scribe looked like he's doing this from memory a lot of times and making mistakes along the way, or but I think this it sheds light. One of the things that the Dead Sea Scrolls do, because I think the way apologists tend to talk about them is like, this is the, it's kind of crazy to me, because um the ideas being forwarded are that the biblical text dating to, like the Iron Age, 1000 BCE, the idea is that these texts were meticulously copied and preserved, and the Dead Sea Scrolls are our evidence for that. But we're talking about texts that are literally hundreds of years after the composition of many of the earlier biblical texts. But what we see in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which is something that is what apologists will tend to do, is just start from there, as if the Dead Sea Scrolls are an accurate preservation of everything that came before them, right? But what happens, what we see in the scrolls, which is pretty interesting, is a snapshot of what looks like a process that's been ongoing for centuries, of scribes copying texts, making adjustments to texts, doing their best with the text that they have in the time period in which they're living, in order to keep them relevant, keep them meaningful. This is how you end up with something like the Book of Jubilees. It's part of an ongoing scribal tradition that probably stretches back much earlier than what we have in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And one of the really exciting things within the scrolls is how they attest to this ongoing scribal tradition.
Wow. Okay, I'm going to continue if you'd like, unless you let me know when you want a little bit of McDowell.
I don't know if we're going to have time for McDowell.
Okay.
We'll see. Maybe we'll just finish up with what this guy has to say here.
Okay.
33. There's only a tiny number of differences between the 1000 AD text and the 150 BC text. Okay.
Only
1500 years early.
2,600 something. Okay.
So,
They're
and
mainly
you'll
spelling
notice how he's
differences in
doing
terms
this.
of how
Like,
you
he's
would place the
only
vowels
focusing on Isaiah 53 to make his point here, right? And of course, he's only focusing on Isaiah 53 because as much lip services as Christian apologists will give to Isaiah, I don't really think they care much about the whole book beyond just this one chapter,
Right.
because it's the Jesus chapter.
Text, so it doesn't affect the meanings of the words at all. Stylistic changes. There's one word difference that actually clarifies something that was in the in some other texts in terms of having light in that verse. But again, radiocarbon dating and paleographic dating of the handwriting puts these things at about 150 BC. So we're looking at a text of Isaiah, which has not been tampered with by after Jesus, nor by Christians after Jesus as well. We've got the book of Isaiah from well over a century before.
Go ahead. I see it on your mouth already. Ready to.
I just love the. It's just the whole idea that Christians would have to tamper with the text, when literally the only reason that you would need to claim that is if you think that the Christian authors weren't aware of that text and reinterpreted it to suit their needs. So it's like this idea that there's prophecies that could only be fulfilled by Jesus is what he's getting at, right? And there's just this narrative out there that these things happened, and then the gospel writers report things in the purest way possible without any influence from the texts that are out there. But like, that's not at all the case. Like, that's what we see is that the Christian writers are literally interpreting exactly these passages. And so it proves nothing to say that the book of Isaiah was in existence.
So yeah, I to word it another way you're just saying is, so what that the text says the same thing it's been saying. How it's been used it varies among Jewish people, like scratch Christianity, which is a bit anachronistic. Jews were interpreting this in various ways. And
Yes.
so like they all read the same text and went, actually, you know what that means? That means this. And others were like, well, actually what this means is, and they had different ways in which they would say, using maybe a Pesher technique or whatever it might be.
It's just good Second Temple Jewish exegesis.
Simple.
That's all that's happening here, right? It's the thing that it always astonishes me too. I'm not entirely sure where this came from, but it's like the thought is that before the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered, there was this ongoing this ongoing suggestion that somehow the text had been tampered with by Christians, like the text of Isaiah 53, to say something that it hadn't said. And as far as I can tell, it's not something that anybody, certainly people who knew what they were doing, it's not something that anybody had any serious questions about whatsoever. Nobody seriously thought that Christians sat down and basically, rewrote Isaiah 53.
Actually, I'm going to defend this idea, and I'm not saying that this is what happened. Let me just tell you what I mean. I have had Rabbi Tovia Singer come on. Rabbi's my friend. You guys know that. But I'm like, if I don't agree, I'm going to let you know. It sounds like he has this idea about the Septuagint that is like this conspiracy theory that the Christians are the ones who made the Septuagint, and that really the Hebrew text is older, because you could see why he would have an apologetic like that to protect or defend his Masoretic text and not have a Greek version that dates older than his Hebrew kind of version here. And so he has this conspiracy theory, if you will, that I think some other Jews are probably propagating out there in the Orthodox community, that the LXX is actually created or adjusted to fit the interpretations, kind of like when you talked about the my hands and my feet are pierced.
Yeah, Psalm 22, right?
Right. And so like this is like an apologetic in a way of defending the Hebrew and saying, see why they messed up. The Christians did this. So that's what I mean by there is this idea that floats out there among Jews and Christians.
Well, it's not that crazy. But we have to be very careful. Again, we have to try to be precise and not try to blow things up to big headlines. But the fact of the matter is that we have very, very, very few Jewish Septuagint manuscripts. So the vast majority of Greek texts of the Hebrew Bible are contained in Christian codices. And so when we talk about the Septuagint or the Greek text of the Hebrew Bible, we have to be very careful to not assume that they are owned or possessed by Jews. They've been transmitted in Christian context. And then I agree, they are susceptible to interpretive intervention, as we might say. And so there's I think we do need to allow for that, just like we do with Josephus. Because Josephus, again, is another text that is a Jewish text, but is transmitted almost uniquely, almost entirely in Christian manuscripts. And so we need to be open for that kind of thing. But with that said, it doesn't have to go that far either. Like, we know that Greek texts were translated from Hebrew originals in the pre-Christian era. So there's no, I don't know, but
I guess that's the thing, right? That's where the rabbi would probably be like, well, we don't really have strong evidence for that. And Christians were big on their reinterpretation. And he has shown how, like, even New Testament, which I've had other academics as well, not just rabbi, point out, look at how the Christians sometimes quote something, and they do things when they're like reworking it in the New Testament, where you go, that's not even in the Masoretic or the Septuagint. Like, you just did something new there that is not, it's unprecedented in any text we have.
Well, I wouldn't say it's unprecedented, right? What I have to make the point here again, that this is not nefarious.
Right.
Like it's not like the Christians are you know, trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. The first century church. Again, this is just the way that Jews in the period were handling their text. This is pretty commonplace. And the
Mhm.
Dead Sea Scrolls, very interestingly, are a trove full of evidence for this kind of activity taking place. How many super chats do you have there, Derek?
I know, that's what I'm worried about. I just wrote in private chat to you guys like, hey, Q&A, you wanna?
Yeah,
We got so
let's-
stick with us. We got 15 minutes. We got 403 of you watching. You're not gonna want to miss
Wow.
what's coming. Okay, we're all gonna go on to the together. We're gonna get onto the Ark of the Covenant here, right?
The Ark of the
We're gonna all enter. You don't want to be left
We're gonna-
here where
We're all gonna
chaos is gonna
sit
happen.
on the mercy seat.
Stick around. So we're going to hit these Q&A real quick here for the super chats, just for show and love. And then we're going to jump over to Dr. Kipp's YouTube channel because he's about to premiere his first bomb drop on Dead Sea Scroll unapologetically stuff. So Brojo, shoot an arrow, draw a circle around it, and say you hit a bullseye. That's what apologists do. Happy holidays, Derek. Thanks for the content you've been providing. Great info. Hit the likes, folks. Absolutely. Thank you. I really appreciate the support. And yes, this is, you start with your conclusion, and guess what you end up with? Isn't it amazing? Your conclusion. So Constellation Pegasus. Have you guys seen The Secret Voyage of Jesus? Jesus going to Spain. It's an incredible story. James Tabor is in it. I haven't seen that.
I've not seen that either.
I haven't seen that. Constellation Pegasus again. What are the dates Judaism and Christianity place for Noah's flood? Way
Do
back.
you know, Matt? This is not my area of expertise. As a good friend of mine.
Or you haven't really had to think about it,
said.
pull out a calculator and try to.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things that you try to avoid having to say anything about when you teach courses in this stuff, because I mean the assumption is then that we can use biblical sources to calculate it, right? And that is a kind of a random thing that we would want to do. But anyway, so if we take the numbers in Genesis, in the Masoretic text of Genesis, I think basically the flood comes at like 1650, so Anno Mundi, so the year of the earth. So if you calculate like the births and deaths or whatever, so it's like 1,650 years after the creation or whatever. And then that means that it would have been like, what does that make it? Then 2300, 2400 BC would be the.
I thought it'd be like 4,000 something.
No, so
BC.
creation is 4,000 BC. So
right.
But I mean, if we're doing that, and that's like what the Christian, and so basically like these kind of numbers, the earliest calculations I've seen for this kind of things are, so I mean, you find it in Jubilees. There's a count. They give you kind of a new chronology that gives you the years and whatever. But then it's early Christian chronographers are trying to tell universal world history. And so we're in like the 2nd, 3rd century AD. Christians are calculating this stuff in order to prove that the world existed for like 6,000 years before Jesus came or something like that. And
right. So that he's the 7,000 year, which is the end.
Yeah.
Augustine, I think, used some type of model where it's like 1,000-year models.
Yep.
Thank you so much for that. Doc Pluromena, if Essenes were versed in early Jewish literature, Daniel, Enoch, etc., why did the Yahad preserve only scant references to resurrection? The rule only advocates a purification without transcendence.
Pseudo Ezekiel aside.
So this is one of those things where so Daniel, I think we should leave Daniel aside because Daniel doesn't really get into resurrection stuff I mean, so we're apocalyptic or proto-apocalyptic or whatever we want to call it. The Enoch stuff is more complicated. So what we have evidenced of the Enochic material from Qumran, I don't know how much of the actual resurrection stuff is there. I have to think about it. It's very fragmentary. But so I mean, I think the thing about the Essenes and or if we call it that, the Qumran and Yahad, they are it's a present corporal community, and that's why purification is so important for the. I mean, they're focused on the they're focused on the here and now of the purification laws, and not just sending it out. Like they're using calendars and using ideas and stuff like that from Enochic and other literature, but it seems like the purification is for their ability to function within their community and not as a guarantee of a future anything.
Yeah. I think something we should point out here too is generally speaking, we identify the group that collected and wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls as Essenes, but there's some finer points to this. Alison Schofield wrote a very good book about identifying how to identify this group and how we speak about them. And I think what we're seeing, what scholars would tend to agree about now, is that this is a segment. This is like a denomination of Essenes. So they're not always going to align with Josephus's description of the Essenes. It's a complicated picture, but we should probably blitz through these, eh?
Yeah. We got two more. Hit type 1 if you're loving this chat right now. And we're getting close to the end. And when I say that, I mean it. I'm not a fellow prophet here, okay? Doc Pleuromanat, Philo properly identified the Qumran group as Esi or Esaio, Essa in Decapolis, the Essenoi were the attendants.
Yeah.
Were the attendants of the Temple of Artemis in Ephesus. How could Josephus confuse the two, yet allegedly was from Jaffa? Philo. I haven't looked into Philo's use of this.
See, I don't know anything about Philo's discussion of the Temple of Artemis. Or is that Josephus?
I don't know. Something worth maybe.
But I will say, I mean, I think I can piggyback on my last response with this question is when we read ancient historians speaking about these larger groups, we have to bear in mind that, like, for instance, I'm not convinced that that Philo's talking precisely about Qumran, or Josephus for that matter, because the Essene movement, like Josephus tells us at one point that it's one of the three largest expressions of Judaism, within the region. So they're everywhere, and there's going to be small differences in how each of these smaller communities are going to operate.
Thank you for that super chat, Doc. I really appreciate both of those supporting the channel. We got 5 minutes till the apocalypse, everybody. Get ready. It's coming. Dafa Rafeli, forgive me if I butcher your name. Please explain clearly about Old Testament fluid text and canon. This is something that I know you and me talked about, Matthew. Is well, Kipp does it all the time too, but we specifically were.
Kipp's very fluid. To put it very, very clearly, there is no such thing as fixed text or fixed canon during the period, so the pre-Christian period, we can say. And then whatever comes after that, we can fight about another time. But the evidence that we have based on the manuscripts that are extant is that there was a large collection of literature that is similar to the genres and what we have that is now in the Hebrew Bible that was collected and circulated together. So there were multiple different types of religious, or whatever we want to call it, scriptural type works. So we can't say that only the books in the Hebrew canon or whatever, only the books that eventually ended up in a Catholic Bible or whatever. We have there's a much broader range of literature. So canonicity can't be defined on that. And we see all different ways in which texts were rewritten, adapted, changed, and interpreted throughout the entire period leading up to the start of Christianity.
Guys, we got 3 minutes, and no more super chats, please, because we're about to hit the apocalypse here. But we have 3 that just popped up. Can we blast through these real quick here? Yes, humanist reformation. So is Isaiah 9:6 not past tense, but future tense in the Dead Sea Scrolls? What about Isaiah 61 Septuagint verse Dead Sea Scrolls, and how it compares with Luke 4:16?
So as far as I know, I'd have to go back and look specifically, but I'm quite certain that the text of Isaiah chapter 9 verse 6 in the Dead Sea Scrolls manuscripts that preserve it is the same as in other Hebrew manuscripts. Isaiah 61 versus the Dead Sea Scrolls and Luke 4:16. This is it's kind of an interesting, again, that as far as I know, there's no controversy regarding the form of the text there. What is interesting is that elsewhere in the Dead Sea Scrolls, we see conflations of these same prophets, these same passages that the New Testament authors are applying to Jesus. So it looks like there's a commonality of tradition there at some point.
Okay, just so you know, I just posted Dr. Kipp's YouTube channel. You're gonna want to go and join us. We're all in a moment. Let's see how many of us make it onto the ark without getting destroyed by Yahweh. Okay, Bradford Baldwin, thank you so much for that super chat. A lot is said about how we don't have the original manuscripts of any of these texts. How would we know if we did have one? Please discuss the methods used. Also hit like.
How would we know if we had one? That is a great question. But the basic answer is that none of the questions, none of the texts that we have early manuscripts of are assumed to be from that time. So the closest we get, I think, would be after reading Torleif Elgvin's most recent book on the Song of Songs, is that we may actually have very, very early copies of Song of Songs among the Dead Sea Scrolls. We may have very, very early copies of Daniel among the Dead Sea Scrolls. But I don't know how we would ever, like, no one that has any sense of academic distance has tried to say we have original copies of anything.
And I think he points out precisely the issue here. How would we know? I mean, it's virtually impossible to know from our vantage point with regards to these manuscripts. In terms of methods, if we're talking about methods for dating texts, we predominantly through paleography, which is examining the hand styles, the handwriting styles, which fluctuate over time, and several of the Dead Sea Scrolls themselves have also been radiocarbon dated.
Thank you, gentlemen.
I think we've got
literally, this one's a quick one, and we do check it
we
out.
Got 2 minutes.
We're literally getting on the ark right now. 410 of you. Let's do it. This is Dr. Kipp's channel. You're about to see a premiere. Everybody, we're going to shift. We've got like 1 minute. Did that sound wrong? It almost sounded like I said we're going to anyway.
No, I heard shift.
I went okay.
I heard it. Anyway.
So
is Matthew 16:28 a failed prophecy? Jesus supposedly makes a bold statement. I think it failed. Seems to be Essenic in nature.
Yes,
I would know it offhand.
Yeah, some of you standing here will not taste death until the Son of Man comes in his kingdom with the glory of the Father with his angels to repay each man according to their deeds. But some of you will not die that are standing here. And this is an early tradition, I think, does stem back from Jesus. And I liked a recent interpretation that Matthew Harkey on my channel on cognitive dissonance and Christianity said, where he's like, Paul, when he says, and 500 saw him, it's not this apologetic to convince you people saw him, so to speak, as much as it is saying like, some of these people are still alive, Paul says. So he's already still saying like, hey, Jesus didn't completely fail yet, because there's, people are still alive who saw him, and he's coming soon, which would mean if he didn't come, he failed.
So I totally agree. I think this is a failed prophecy. And I think that what we see is exactly in the parallel with Luke, right? So in Luke 9:27 or something like that, this is paralleled. And Luke, who then I think probably may actually have been using Matthew. So this is another debate that you all get into and other things. But I think Luke actually is fixing this and says, you don't see the kingdom of God. Like you'll see this kingdom of God. And so he's like making that little adaptation. It's not the Son of Man coming back, it's the kingdom of God. And then suddenly, you could have seen that without Jesus coming back or something. And so it's trying to fix that failed prophecy.
Yeah, that shift happens. Thank you so much. Again, are there any final words before we blast off into the apocalypse?
Have fun.
We got like 5 seconds.
Go
Enjoy
right
the video,
now.
you guys.
Let's go. I just posted it in the chat. 387 people. Follow us over. Let's go. I'm over there. I love you. We are MythVision.